Well, I think that there's nothing like seeing a photograph. You know, the old story, a picture tells 1,000 words, is very true. And more in this culture that we live in, we've realized that that's indeed true. People rather look at a picture than read a long story. And there's a certain unfortunate part to that, but it's the reality. People go through thousands of frames of images a minute these days between the web, the television, and magazines. So people are entertained by photographs. Doesn't mean they necessarily read the photograph correctly, but it means they are looking.
So when you say read the photograph correctly, I'm very interested in visual literacy. So how do you read a photograph?
Huh. Well, I always tell photographers that they should read a photograph as a child would read a photograph. Just literally, what do you see in the photograph? Because photographers invest so much time into one image that they often read all the backstory to what it took to making the photograph. And that leads to its significance for them. Whereas the viewer has no idea what the backstory is. They have no idea what the problem was that they went through. I'll give an example. I had a photographer once who had a war photograph where there was two soldiers standing by a wall with guns, and the soldiers were looking both ways and looking kind of scared, but there was no one on the streets. The streets were empty. You couldn't see what they were afraid of. You couldn't see what they were shooting at. And it didn't have any kind of decisive moment. It looked like a moment before something happened. And the photographer argued with me greatly because he said if he had taken one step further, he would have been shot at, because there were fighters on either side of the soldiers waiting to shoot at them. But you couldn't see any of this. So it was an assumption, because the photographer was very, very scared for his life at that moment. But you didn't get the sense of that fear in that photograph. You just saw these soldiers looking either way. So for the viewer wasn't going to get anything out of it, even though it was one of the most intense moments of the photographer's life.